Is that where you were there? Just go right down. You didn't push go by. Okay, just stay there. Then you gotta go back to your what happened? Is it
Let's sing push play.
you didn't push go by. Okay, just stay there. Then you
What happened?
just go back to your seat.
Let's sing push play.
End it. Okay.
Oh,
so sorry.
Sorry, this is
You gotta end it.
where.
Exit out of it. You gotta be done. We're gonna try it again. Okay, go to back to Trello again. Are you there?
I'm
You
here.
hear it?
Yeah.
You're here?
Okay.
Yep.
Find out where she is though.
I know.
On here.
Right here. Let's go here. There we are.
There.
Okay.
Just push on Zoom when you have that.
Yeah.
Okay. Because it's always delayed 10 seconds. Does that make sense?
Oh,
That's
we're
why-
on live actually.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. Here we go. We're so excited to have Bri Edwards with us tonight. She's spoken before and she told her story about Locke, and he passed away from SIDS. And it was a beautiful story as she and her husband shared, and they've actually created Locke's Legacy and helping people that have dealt with SIDS in the South Dakota area, and just so inspiring to me and helping many, many families through their grief. And now, so exciting, is she has a book out in the world.
Yay.
It's called 1,000 Pounds. And and it's actually, if you saw the graphic, it's a dragonfly. And I love her story about behind the dragonfly. And there we are.
Yes. Oh my
Yay.
gosh. Keep it there for a second. Let us see the whole thing. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Can you read that for us? What it says? Finding.
Finding the strength to live and love under the weight of unbearable loss.
Yes. And so I'm going to have her start out and tell us, because you see this dragonfly, and we all know dragonflies are like one of the lightest things, but it's called 1,000 pounds. I just love the story behind that. So go ahead.
Just about the dragonfly and kind of where that
Yes.
came from.
Uh,
So the dragonfly really for us became an important symbol, even like from the day Locke died. When we left the hospital team sent us with a little care package, and in that was a little book called Water Bugs and Dragonflies by Doris Stickney. And it's just a little children's story about the little water bugs at the bottom of the pond, and every once in a while one of them would crawl up the stalk and disappear. And so the ones at the bottom of the pond were trying to figure out where they were going and why they weren't coming back. So they had a little town meeting and decided that the next one that climbed the stalk would come back and let them know where they went. And so the next day, the one that called the meeting found himself climbing the stalk and landing on the top of the lily pad in a new form, and he was now a dragonfly. And so in that, he was enjoying the new sights and the new colors and his new glorified body, and eventually remembered the promise that he made, but realized that even if he could get below the surface, they wouldn't recognize him in his new form. And so with that, it just became an immediate reminder, an immediate symbol that Lachlan is still here. He's still alive. He's just above the surface. And so he's never very far away. And that symbol gave us something to cling to, and it gave us a lot of hope right from the very beginning. And then, has gone on to take on, additional meaning of our own transformations that happen through this grief. And so, yeah, it's been something that's been part of our family now since the day he died.
That's so amazing. I love that. It's so beautiful.
So I have a question for you.
Sure.
So when you see these when you see a dragonfly, what's your response to the dragonfly? Because I have my own with my own butterflies, but what do you do when you see a butterfly, or what does it, or dragonfly, sorry, what do you do when that happens to you?
It's mostly just a pause of gratitude. We often notice them, and they tend to show up on the right days at the right times in the right places. I was actually just talking to somebody else the other day about how it seems like most of the time on our family vacations, it's not just happen to see a dragonfly, but they seem to show up in a little more notable ways, particularly when we're doing something as a family and missing him especially. And so, yeah, it's really just a pause of gratitude that,
What a great gift, right? I feel like it's
yes.
just like sometimes I think, oh, I'm talking to this butterfly, but really I'm like, is it her? Maybe it's just a sign, right, of my little Layla coming down, but we don't really know, but just something that gives us that little hope for the day, right? And kind of warms our heart. And I love that.
A reminder that they're present here with us. They're not very far away, even when we can't see them.
So true. So true. And then going on to the title of the book.
Yeah.
How it all came together with, how did you know that you needed to or wanted to write a book?
I love this part of the story. So with our nonprofit, I had done a lot of little like blog posts and writings of little bits along the way. And I had a lot of people that told me, Bri, you should think about writing a book, write a book. Which I kind of liked the idea, but the loss of a child is just such a big thing. It kind of enmeshes with everything in your life and the way you think and the way you go through life and all of your perspectives. And so it's just so big that I was kind of stuck with like, how do you frame that story? Who are you telling it to exactly? Which parts of the story do you tell? Because no matter how much you write, you can't write it all. And so like, how do you make that a cohesive book that's worthwhile for somebody else to read? And so it stayed in the abstract of just like, yeah, maybe I'll write a book someday for a long time. And then I have a cousin who has dreams that sometimes seem to mean something. And I was talking to her one day and she said, oh, by the way, I had a dream you were writing your third book.
Oh.
I know. So I said, I kind of laughed. I'm like, oh, that's cute. Like, cause I can't come up with one. And so I was joking, but I said, like, you didn't happen to catch a title and an outline, did you? And she goes, well, no, not exactly. But one of them was called 1,000 pounds. Right.
So cool.
And so as soon as she said that, it's based on an analogy that I've used for grief for a long time, and that in the beginning, it feels like somebody drops 1,000 pounds on your chest and you can't think and you can't move and you can't breathe. And it's so crushing that it's just paralyzing, but that it's not a weight that ever really goes away, but it's a weight that little by little we learn to carry. And so like, as soon as she had the title for the book, I sat down later that afternoon and I knew exactly what the book would look like. I outlined the whole thing kind of all at once. But then in the writing of it, I just felt the call that this was not to be a project that interrupted all of family life, and that it needed to be something that stayed in the background while I did, taking care of the rest of the kids and work and everything that life entails, which is not my normal personality style. Usually if I'm going to start a project and I decide I'm going to do something, I want to jump in with both feet and do it all at once. So it was a little bit of a feat of discipline for me to keep it as background material for most of the writing of it. And then it turns out that, little by little, I would write for 15 minutes, maybe 45 minutes at a time, as I could before the kids got up in the morning, which is not the most efficient way to write a book, because every time you sit down and you got to reread, like, where did I leave off? And anyway, but I was, probably 2/3 of the way through writing and starting to look into things like, how do you find a literary agent and what kinds of letters do you need to write, and the whole process of finding a publisher, and starting to learn that this may be the hardest step of the whole thing, is to find somebody who wants to publish it. And about that time, I had a complete kind of whim of an idea for another book that I would like to write, and the right guy to co-author it with. And I kind of on an impulsive decision decided just to email him and pitch him the idea, which then he's big enough in his circles that I probably really had no business even reaching out to him and trying. But he emailed me back and asked, kind of did some back and forth and asked me more about what I was thinking. And I ended up sending him a few sample chapters of what I already had written. And he said, well, we're actually just launching a publishing press and we're looking for authors to partner with. Providential. Wow. And so like this step that was like intimidating to me in finding the publisher, then just kind of fell right into my lap.
Wow, such a God thing, right? When things like that happen.
Exactly.
He's like, oh, I got it. Here you go.
Right. So these things that like I couldn't plan or coordinate, but have happened along the way to show me that God is here in this journey and kind of supporting the project. The next piece of that was, submitted my manuscript. We're getting started. The publisher hires an editor to start working on kind of the first round of editing. And we'd been working together for several months, but she got to the spot in the book where I was talking about dragonflies and why those are important to us. And she just sent me a note. She said, dragonflies are important at our house too, for different reasons, but they're meaningful for them too. And she said, oh yeah, and the company that I work for is actually called Dragonfly Editorial.
No way.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yep. And then, yeah, there was a long pause then. So I was thinking we were getting close. There was a long pause as this new press was kind of reorganizing some business structure and finishing up another big project that they had. And the whole time I was waiting, like it's a painful wait. Like you think you're on the brink of ready to send this book out. And then it was another 6 months where we really didn't do anything with it. But the whole time still, there was this sense that I don't know what God is doing with this pause, but I feel like there's purpose in this too. And so waited sort of impatiently for God to finish whatever it was he was doing. And then as they were ready to start moving forward, they happened to hire somebody for another job actually within their company who mentioned she had some publishing experience. And so she became kind of the final round as far as the proofreading and the final kind of copy edit and the design of the book. And she was just an extraordinary gift to the final preparations of this book. And at the same time, it also was very meaningful for her and where she was at in her own life and her own journey. So yeah, one more piece of, just overlaying meaning and good timing, providential timing. And then in the very last, so our plan was to launch the book. So then the timing worked out even. So we opened up a launch team for early access to the readers on May 12th, which was the anniversary of when Lachlan died. And then had that open for early readers with a plan to actually launch the book out into the world on his birthday. And so in that piece of it, Amazon's kind of goofy in how they've got a pretty wide window as far as when you submit the book to when it will actually be ready for people to purchase. And so they actually had it approved very quickly. And so it was ready for purchase before we were really ready. And it's like, okay, well, here goes. Well, then it turned out that because they had it ready, people were ordering that book right away. And then people all over the country were opening their mail, opening their gifts of Lachlan and his love on his 15th birthday. So they were like, the first books were arriving to people's houses on his birthday, which was even so much better than just being able to order it on his birthday.
Yes.
Tell us the date of his birthday and when it was launched and when it became available to people.
June 21st.
Just
So then
just barely.
That's my birthday too.
Oh, it is.
That's a wonderful day, the longest day of the year.
It is.
To launch it. Oh my goodness. This is just barely new.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So
for
really,
anyone that wants to purchase this book, what do they do?
it's on Amazon. So £1,000. If you do an Amazon search for £1,000, it'll come right up. And
wonderful. I'm buying it.
I know. And it's
I'm a
like
customer.
#1 in the grief section, isn't it? I saw that.
Yeah. So it has been like a wonderful and amazing and kind of awe-inspiring thing to just like watch it go out into the world. Because at this point, most of it is out of my hands. I can do bits of talking about it, but it doesn't take long for me to reach the end of my circles.
Yeah.
And it has hit the #1 new release in 3 different Amazon categories. the publishers are very happy with how it's selling so far. I
Do
have
you
so
feel like
many.
Lachlan has been like a part of this?
Oh, absolutely. That's, especially, I mean, like all along, but particularly in this phase, now that it's been released, and I I have no say in how people are receiving that or what they want to do with it.
You
And
love mommy.
he's
Mommy, I'll help you.
he's building his own legacy at this point,
Yeah, sure.
so
Yeah.
it's cool to just, now I feel like a participant in it,
Yeah.
more than the driving force behind it. And
Just watching everything bloom and grow, right? into this
yeah,
beautiful, touching lives. That's so cool.
Stacey has so many things that she loved from your book right here. What are a few things that you love from
I
her book?
just so just the intro, you were saying, I simply offer this version of my story as one of a million possible perspectives on learning to bear the unbearable. And you talked about how like losing someone and dying is not a new thing, right? It's been happening since the world began, and there's many perspectives, but I just love how you just like, there is a perspective. Everyone has their own perspective on it, right? And if we can reach into those ones that offer hope and just healing, because we've all been to those places that's just anger and darkness, and that happens, and I think it has to happen, but to be able to like grab onto these perspectives, and yours I think is very a beautiful like perspective. I just love that. And you said, I hope that the reader might find even a fragment of new perspective that brings comfort as they grieve. So I just loved that. I never, like, when you're just going through it, it's a big fog. You don't think about, I don't know, perspective.
You don't, you just think
You're
this is the
just-
worst thing that could ever happen. So when is your book, is it good for someone who just barely lost someone, or should they wait for a while? Or what stage is this book good for someone to read?
I think,
yeah. Tell me what you think, Stacey.
oh, I think anytime.
Yeah.
Beginning to,
Like, I don't know, like, okay, maybe not right at the beginning, because I wasn't going to read anything right.
I didn't
'cause,
read anything right at the
but-
beginning either.
I don't know if
month
you
or
can
two
put it
out?
into like months or whatever, but
I
maybe
was
6
ready to
months,
read.
I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's well, and I think that's different for everybody too, as far
Yeah.
as when they're at a spot where they're ready to absorb something, outside of themselves. It's just like so much just to be in your own skin right from the
Yes.
beginning. But I
Yeah.
think one of the beautiful things about books, I found a lot of comfort in books. When I was early in my grief, it was something that I could take in a little bit at a time, or I could binge read it, or it could sit on the shelf for years until I was ready for it. And it was, I could just read it at whatever pace I needed to, and hear
Yeah.
the stories of other people and learn those perspectives and understand that I wasn't crazy for how I was thinking and feeling.
I'm excited to read
I
this.
know.
Oh my
I
goodness.
loved another one that used to call it the broken heart syndrome. And it says newly bereaved people feel crushing chest pain. Cardiac enzymes and EKGs can measure changes in these achy, grieving hearts that mimic a heart attack. And I'm like,
oh my gosh, I've experienced
yes,
those where I
I
feel like
have
I
been
can
there.
breathe. Like you're just like, I just can't breathe.
yeah.
Like you can't.
And then just
handle
this
it.
whole sense of dissociation. You said, I felt detached from reality of my surroundings and disconnected from my physical and emotional
true.
experiences. And then you said, I wondered if this was what schizophrenia feels like.
Oh
and
my
I
gosh.
totally remember being there, where it's like you're there in body, but you are so
Lost.
like hazy and just, you can't even think straight.
You're living emotions, but you don't even know what you're doing. And
Yeah.
you don't even know what you're feeling either.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the things that is kind of unique about this book from other grief books that I've read. Like it's a very open and vulnerable telling of my story, but I also have that woven in with quite a bit of like grief research and findings. So like those things that you mentioned. So Stacey, like when I was having that chest pain myself, like I'm thinking like I must be crazy. Like nothing physically happened to me, but I swear my heart actually hurts.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I didn't think I was gonna cry, but here I am. I'm gonna but so that's like, and to learn and to know that there are actual measurable changes that happen, and that like that isn't in my head, and I'm not crazy. That is a like normal measurable part of the grief experience. And then it starts to like take away, we can be so hard on ourselves, and then we're taking what's already in like a terribly heavy burden, and we're adding more to it by thinking I must be crazy, or I'm losing it. I'm not doing this right. I'm making stuff up in my head that like, and
Satan coming in and saying, you're not good enough. You're awful at this, you know?
right. And so that's like, as I started learning those things and just like making peace with, it was okay for my grief to be what it was and how it was, and whatever it happened to be in the day, like all of that was okay. And I stopped fighting it.
Yeah. I think
And
the biggest thing is like just letting yourself go through it. And I think this is so good for people to read, because if they do feel crazy, they are going to fight against it. Like try to fight to not feel it, try to fight to, you know, everything. But if they know that it's just normal, then they can just go through it. It's painful and it's hard, but when you do it, when you actually like go through it and you do something, like even for me, like going past Lily's dance studio, it was hard the first time, or like seeing her friends, even though I loved them, it was hard to see her friends. But after you do it, it's like you just feel like a tiny bit stronger, that you can like, you know.
absolutely. Yeah.
Though, because some people feel crazy. I remember feeling crazy, and I would call her going, how the heck did you get through this? Like, I think I'm going crazy. I don't think will ever be the same. And just reading these few sentences, I've never even read your book yet, but this just allows people to know, do you know what? I can go there and I can still be okay. It gives you hope. I think just reading these few things from your book. So
Yeah, I think, I think that's just it. There's a lot of it that is about kind of leaning into that. Culturally, we're kind of trained to just avoid pain, however you need to do it. And so when it's a big emotional pain that turns into a social media scroll, distracting ourselves, or whatever, people all have their own vices and weaknesses as far as how they like to kind of numb and escape their pain. And there's a sense, even before Locke died, most of the hard things that I had lived through were things that you just give it some time and it kind of goes away. And this being something different, like you can't run from that and you can't hide from that, and it will always be waiting for you. And so then you can end up spending so much, and I had my phases where I did that, is spending so much time and energy just trying to protect yourself from that pain, feeling fearful and anxious about when it's going to show up or how it's going to show up. And so really like learning to lean into that and essentially befriend my grief and know that it's going to be beside me, and there's going to be times that it shows up, and that's okay. And then I can live the rest of my life with peace and joy, not worried about when and where that grief is going to show up.
Another one that really hit home was when you said like it's such a mix of emotions, like you're going to feel anger, denial, all of that stuff, sadness, and it's so heavy. But I remember the moment of like gratitude that I felt with that was like, Josh, we were leaving the hospital in Nebraska, coming home to Rapid City, and I hadn't had my phone, and Josh gave me my phone, and there was messages upon messages from people just reaching out, and I was bawling, like, and not, it wasn't, I just felt so much love. Like, I just couldn't believe that so many people were just like loving on me, and like, I guess you should expect that, right? When something hard happens, but you're just so blown away by that. And just to have both of those things was crazy.
Yeah, agreed. Like that's I'm in that spot you're talking about, like talking about feeling both happy and sad at the same time, or feeling that like overwhelming gratitude with, that anger. And I felt very angry, and I felt betrayed by God. And so like I was feeling both of those things at the same time, both upset and angry with him, and an overwhelming gratitude for the comfort that he was providing through those days, months, years.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to share with everyone? Do you have a favorite part or favorite anything you want to?
Oh,
I know there's much. There's so much good.
I know. Okay. Yeah,
Go
I've
ahead.
got a couple of things. So one, as I was writing, I really I wanted it to be not just my story, but I really wanted it to be an occasion for people to dive into their own stories and kind of work through processing their own grief. And so the book does come with a free download of journaling prompts. And so there's instructions in the book as far as how to get to those, so that it can really be an occasion for people to go into their own stories. There are journal questions that are set up. There's 3 different versions right now, one for the loss of a child, one for the loss of a loved one, and then a third one for the loss of a baby during pregnancy. I found in working with bereaved parents that the language of the questions matters. And I've used some support group materials that the questions aren't fitting for the loss of a child, and those really rub parents the wrong way. And so to just give people the framing that fits best for their circumstance was part of what we wanted to offer there. And then the other thing with this book that has been really neat is to see just such a wide variety of people and experiences that are finding something that resonates with the book. It's people who have lost parents, it's people who have lost siblings, it's people who are grieving over even have a non-death related grief of life not being as we hoped and planned it to be. People that are newer in their grief, people that are decades out from their grief. Even people who have not experienced significant losses or not actively grieving really in any way. I've had multiple people tell me that they are really finding something in being more present to their own families and really cherishing those simple ordinary moments that they have with their kids. And so that's another one of those kind of God things that I could never have written to all of those people at once. That's, as I was writing the story, I was imagining sitting across the table from a newly bereaved parent and all the stuff that I would love to be able to tell them all at once. And yet a much wider audience is finding something that resonates and is meaningful for them, and they're taking something away from it.
Wow, that's so cool. I can't wait to delve more into this book. Shannon can't wait to read.
Oh my gosh, I'm buying this tomorrow.
And we are going to actually each gift someone your book. We'd love to have any of you watch this till the end and comment
below.
Yeah.
Those are people we're going to be choosing. So make sure you comment.
Yes,
wanting a copy.
Thank you so much, Bri. I feel like this is for everyone. Like you said, it's not just for loss of your loved one, but there's everyone experiences grief in some way in life, and what a great tool your book is. I can already tell it is for me, and so proud of you and so excited for you.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me come share it with you and the SRVIVRS crew.
Yeah, we'll be posting where they can get it, and
thanks for being a survivor with us through something so hard and making something so beautiful for the rest of people and sharing your heart with us.
Thank you. Yeah, likewise.
1,000 pounds, right?
Yeah,
1,000 pounds.
Thank you.
Bye, Brianne.
Bye.